everyone, it's Shel C from PaperOcotilloStudio. Today I'm sharing with you some playing around that I did with some different distress inks, both the distress oxide and the regular distress ink, and the gel plate. I noticed as I was trying to find things to distract myself from cleaning that I was really needing a lot of thank you notes. I like to send thank you notes to people who donate to my channel. You can donate down there below, on that little clicky thing, the PayPal donation button. So I needed to make some simple cards, and I decided to try out Distress Oxide first on the plate. So this is my 8x10 gel plate, and I cut a piece of dark cardstock the size of a card front, which is 4¼ inches by 5½ inches, which is 1/4 of a regular 8½ by 11 sheet. And to make a standard card here in the United States, you just take one of those 8½ by 11 pieces of cardstock, cut it in half, fold it in half, and then that's a standard, what we call an A2 envelope. I know that the European designations for those things are different than ours in the United States, and I'm not sure, but it's just a standard invitation size envelope. And so I taped that piece of dark paper underneath my plate so that I could kind of use it as a guide to line up my card fronts. And then I started applying Distress Oxide inks. I wanted to make layers, and I wanted to make an ombre effect. So I started with 3 colors. And first I put the ink onto my extra plate, which is a 6x6, and I was using it as kind of like a palette to use my brayer and try to make this very ombre effect onto the card. And I'm using 2 different types of cardstock. One of them is a glossy coated cardstock, and the other one is a standard ultra smooth solar white cardstock from Nina, and trying different cardstock with it as well. What I discovered is I don't like the Distress Oxide ink because it keeps leaving this weird film, and you can see it right here as I'm trying to clean it off. If you've used Distress Oxide ink, you can do that thing where you can flick water on it, and it gives that kind of chalky, what they consider the oxide part of the Distress Oxide. It leaves that impression on the paper that it has these little white spots where something has happened to the ink. It's been distressed or whatever. And that stuff stays on the plate. Not only does it stay on the plate, it stays on the cards. And then when you go to put the second layer on, it gets on the plate again. So it's just kind of weird. It's like this powdery white stuff. Does it affect anything? I'm not sure. Is it easy to clean off? Yes, it's very easy to clean off. I tried some different stamps to make some impressions. I guess just this one set of stamps, and then I decided that I didn't really like that either, so I switched to stencils. But I'm not trying to do anything difficult here. I'm just trying stuff out to see what happens, and I keep having to clean that white stuff off my plate, and you can really see it very well because of that dark stuff, the dark paper that I put in the background. You can see the white coming through really strongly. So then I decided to switch to regular distress ink to see how that works. All I have in regular distress ink is these small 1" by 1" cubes pads. I never really got into it. I have a ton of dye inks from back in my stamping days when I was a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. So I never thought to really buy a bunch of distress ink because I thought, it's dye ink. But then when the hybrid inks came out, the Distress Oxides, I wanted to try those. So I did buy like a large sampler set of those, and I have the larger sizes of those. So that's why I started out with them first. And I like the distress ink without the oxide in it better on the plate. It does give some nice bright colors, and it doesn't leave the weird powdery stuff on the plate, although right there you can see it, and that's because I was putting a second layer on a card that had already had the oxide ink on it, and when I put the second layer on it, it left that same white film on the plate. So this is really just experimenting, playing. I know that I'm going to use these for card backgrounds. I'm going to make some very simple cards with it, and I'm just trying to get pattern and color. You can see the difference there between the glossy cardstock, which is what I have in my hand, and the solar white smooth cardstock, which is up there on the left-hand side. Those are the same colors, same technique, but depending on the type of paper that you use, just like any type of art, it does make a difference. And the glossy cardstock is a lot brighter in color. The smoother cardstock with the distress ink, it dulls it out. So I guess it absorbs into the paper a lot more. Now that one, it came out weird. I guess I had water on the plate, and so I just smoothed it out with my brayer, and it was fine as well. That one had some stamped impressions on it already. With the oxide inks, which I thought would act more like a resist because they do have the oily pigment stuff in them, but instead they acted more like an absorbent. They sucked up the other distress dye ink and made darker impressions, which I don't really know what's in any of these inks, so I don't really get what happens when I use them. That's why you experiment. That's why you play with it and try to figure out what the results will be. You just never know. They're new formulations of ink. Back when I was an ink person and I knew all about all the inks, these inks didn't exist. So I know that the distress inks are dye-based, but they do act differently than the other dye-based pads that I have. I know that the oxides are a hybrid that has pigment and dye, but it doesn't act like a regular pigment ink that I used to use for embossing and things like that. So, yeah, that's why you experiment, that's why you play. I did discover that I like to put the ink right onto the plate, like just turn the pad over and squish it right onto the plate rather than trying to pick it up off something else. When I do that, when I make an three color, two color ombre type look, I put the ink on there with the pad and then I just smooth it a little bit with the brayer just so that it's not, it doesn't have lines in it. And that works perfectly fine. Here again, I was putting a second coat of something on one of the ones that I had already put oxide on, and I got that white stuff off the card. So you just don't know what you're going to get. It just wipes off with water. Spray a little water on there, wipe it off with a paper towel kitchen roll. So no big deal. I was enjoying this stencil, however. These look to me like, especially the one all the way to the right, it looks like under the water. The stencils are from these swirly ones are from Stencilgirls. Where actually all the stencils I used were from Stencilgirl, with the exception of the one I used at the very end, which is the first time I've ever owned a Patty Tolly Parrish stencil. She does a live stream show, and she has a whole line of stencils, and my friend Peg sent me one, which I'd never owned one before. They're a little bit different type of plastic than other ones that I own. I've been going through all my stencils and sorting them, labeling them, trying to organize them in a new system that I have, which I will show sometime when I finish everything up. I'll give you guys a studio tour of all the stuff I've changed. But I get myself distracted by doing things like making cards. So I'd rather make cards than clean. I really like that stencil. That one is designed by Mary Beth Shaw from Stencilgirl, and it's a 6x6 kind of a mask. It doesn't have edges, and I really enjoy that one. It's a cool stencil. So I'm just continuing to add layers to these backgrounds. If I think they're not dark enough or bright enough, then I put another layer on. And I've switched completely to regular distress ink now, and I'm not using the oxide anymore, even though I keep getting that oxide residue on my plate. So once I'm finished doing all these, I'm just going to be turning them into very simple cards. And I have this container of things I've received in Happy Mail envelopes over the years. I do a swap with somebody or something, and they give me little things, little die cuts or stickers, or just, when you send somebody an envelope, you usually put something in it additional to just the thing that you're swapping. That's common practice when you swap art type stuff like ATCs or tags, or you're doing a year-long swap with a bunch of different people. Every time you put something in the envelope, some little things, and those things accumulate. And I have like a plastic box. It's not even all of them. It's just it got full, and then I made another plastic box rather than getting a bigger one. I started putting them in a different place, but I am going to use that box to make my cards, and they're going to be very simple. I have a couple different rubber stamps that say thank you. These are all going to be thank you cards because that's what I need. That's what I use the most, and I'm going to stamp a sentiment, and I'm going to put the stickers or the die cuts or whatever it is that I have in the box onto the cards, and then maybe a little bit of pen work or shading or something, but nothing dramatic, nothing amazing, just very simple cards. So here's where I switched to the Patty Tolly Parish stencil. I do notice that it's a different type of plastic, and when I put my card over the top of it, it slips. So I just decided to go ahead and use that to my advantage and just make a very abstracted look on the card. Just, putting it in different directions, letting it slip. That surprised me a little bit. I didn't know that. I guess there's different types of stencil plastic out there, and this one happens to be slick. Yeah, see, it happened again. After that, I started being a little bit more careful. I'm used to just plopping my paper on there and calling it good, but this one, yeah, it was slickery. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this gel print with distress inks experiment. I know there's other videos out there from other people who've done the same thing, and I'm sure if you want to learn more about what you can do, there's lots of content available from wow, lots of content available from lots of YouTube creators out there. That's what I'm trying to say. We have a huge community and we make lots of content. So, yeah, you can go and watch some. Make sure that if you find some more distress ink things, that you give those people likes, comments, you subscribe to their channels. Just like mine, I would appreciate if you like my video and comment, subscribe, share, all those things so that I can continue to make videos for free. So now I'm just showing all the different backgrounds that I did, just laying them out for you in kind of color families. And then, of course, there'll be a few of the cards that I made. I didn't use every single one of these yet, but I did make quite a collection of cards. So I'll show those at the end in pictures. That's it for me. Thanks. Bye-bye.